Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to go over part two of the series that we were working on our last project. Remember, this is a series of projects that are going to allow us to build the CD or CICD pipeline, right? So this is going to be again part two. Now, if you don't remember, what did we do in part one? In part one, we pretty much just hosted an application, created the environment to host an application on a EC2 instance, right? Now, if you don't remember, let me quickly just find it here and go back to it. So this was part one, and you can go back to the project that I worked on, and you can see how I went through this if this is the first time you encountered this. Okay, but now let me just go back to part two, and we'll just kick it off where we left off. Basically, now we have our application hosted on the EC2 instance. So now what we're going to do is connect all these source code. We're going to upload it into GitHub. We're going to create a repository in GitHub, and we're going to host and store all the application information on there. Okay. Now, if you guys deleted the instance, go ahead and recreate it. Just follow the same steps. So in this project, it'll show you exactly what you need to do to get back on track. Okay, so again, what we did here was we created the application and we just hosted it here on the DC2 instance. We did not use code artifact. I believe that's deprecated on AWS. So instead we used Visual Studio. Okay. So now we're in this part, right? We're going to go ahead and create a GitHub account, which I already have. It's real easy to create, but I will just follow along here the steps, and I'll just make sure I clarify certain things. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up Git and then GitHub. So Git is a program just like GitHub, but it's just it's an application that's stored on your local machine. GitHub, on the other hand, is basically how a cloud application, right? So you have your local hosted application, and then you have your cloud application. So in this first step of the project, we are going to go ahead and do that. All right. So I'm just going to make sure we select low touch, and I'm going to skip the whole first three parts, or the first two parts, which again it tells us how to create that user account in AWS, and also how to go over the creation of the application and the EC2 instance. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump all the way to step 3, where we have already the so right now, as you guys can see from the last video, if you recall, right, we stopped at this point. We are connected to the instance, right, to the EC2 instance, and here is that we have hosted our application. Now, what is that we're going to do next? So let me just quickly open my terminal. Okay. And okay, so it looks like we are already running into problems. That is not an issue. We can quickly fix it. So if you guys recall, we run into this issue before where we needed to integrate it. You might run into this issue actually. Sure. No, I don't want that. CW. So. Let me go here to settings. Okay, we're gonna go here and integrated. If you guys recall, we had the same issue, I believe, last time, but it seems like it didn't save. So I'm just going back to it. Integrated. We should find it here. Integrated. I was stuck here. Integrate terminal integrated. Maybe this. Maybe this. Should find it here, guys. Just bear with me for just a moment. Again, you might run into this issue. Basically, what's happening is that Visual Studio is not able to open the terminal on this specific like directory path. So we need to set that up. Right now, it's opening the my local directory path, which is something that we don't want. We want to open the path on the EC2 instance. Okay, hope you guys can understand what I'm saying, but you'll see here what I'm talking about. Just gotta find here terminal integrated. Let me see if it's terminal dot integrated. Okay, so here is where I want to type home EC2 user next work web project. So hopefully this works. Okay, so is this saved though? I want to save it. The terminal process failed to launch starting directory CWD. It's because I'm not typing it right. It's home EC2. Okay. So what about now? Okay, there we go. So I just fixed it. So if you run into this issue where you are, once you are connected to the instance, right? It might give you this error, which it's not able to launch that terminal with that path, right? So again, what you do is you go to settings. On settings, you're going to select the EC2 instance, and it's here that you need to make the change. Right now, after here, make sure that you are selecting this default path so that every time we open a terminal from Visual Studio to this EC2 instance, it would automatically take us here. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that was clear. Bash. Okay, we'll leave it at bash. Okay, so we can just go ahead and continue. All right. So we are in step 3. Now that your development environment is ready, the next step is to set up Git on your EC2 instance. Okay. Install so in your own words, we are going to install Git, right, to store the app source code locally. Okay. Okay. So what is Git, guys? Git is like a time machine and filing system for your code. It tracks every change you make, which lets you go back to an earlier version of your work if something breaks. You can also see who made specific changes and when they were made, which makes teamwork and collaboration a lot easier. Extra for expert, Git is often called a version control system since it tracks your changes by taking snapshots of what your files look like at specific moments. and each snapshot is considered a version. So I believe I already have it installed, but we'll do it here anyway. All right, so just go ahead and run that command. Looks like it's complete. Okay. So what do these commands mean? It tells your instance to find all the latest updates of software it has. Okay. Remember on the part one of the project of this series of projects, right? We installed Java and Maven. Okay, and then the second part of the command says that it installs Git on your EC2 instance. It's best practice to update your existing software before installing new ones, just in case there are compatibility issues between new and old software. Okay, and then the -y is a shortcut for yes, meaning you're giving your EC2 instance approval in advance for any time the system might ask questions like, should I proceed with this installation? So again, we want to simplify things for us. Now to confirm, let's see which version do we have installed. We have version 2.47.1. Depending on when you're watching this, you may have a different version, but that shouldn't really be a problem. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a screenshot of this, and we'll do this right here. We'll do EC2. Yes. Downloads. Okay. So Git is a version control system that keeps track of who and what changes have been made to the source code. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, right? And you'll see everything, how everything makes sense or takes place once we start working on it, once we go through the project. Again, it's just a software where we're going to be uploading all our code, right? And then people, wherever they are, or I should say your co-workers, if you guys are working on a project, they don't have to be connected on the same physical machine. They can have access to the source code, in regardless of where they are located physically. Okay, so far we're doing good. So now we're going to go ahead and set up GitHub, okay, which I already have. So what are we doing this step? We are going to create a GitHub account and also create a GitHub repository. Now you might be asking, what is a GitHub repository? A GitHub repository basically is just like a folder, right, that you're creating on your computer and your file explorer. Well, in this case, you're going to create like a folder on GitHub, and it is on this folder, or now you should call it repository, that we're going to store all our source code. Okay. So okay. So let me guys show you here. So this is my GitHub account, right? I mean, I have other projects that I've worked on, and so because I told you guys I've done this project already in the past, that's why you see it here already created. But I'll create a new repository just so that it doesn't conflict with this one, and also that you guys know or see how I go about creating a new repository. Okay, so once we have the account created, so which we can skip this part, let's talk about here the differences. Okay, so if Git is the tool for tracking changes, think of GitHub as the storage space for different version of your project that Git tracks. Okay, so see, I made a mistake. I thought it was a local repository and a cloud repository. That's not the case. So Git is just a tool that allows you to track changes, and then GitHub is the cloud storage um, software. Okay, now since GitHub is a cloud service, it also lets you access your work from anywhere and collaborate with other developers other than the internet. That part was, I was right. Okay, so why would I use GitHub? Isn't the code in my EC2 instance already in the cloud? That's a good question. Even though your code is on a cloud server like EC2, GitHub helps you use Git and see your file changes in a more user-friendly way. It's like how using an IDE Visual Code makes editing code easy. GitHub is also especially useful in situations where you're working in teams and need to share updates and reviews to a shared code base. Okay, so GitHub is a cloud storage software. I am using GitHub in this project to store. I feel like they ask the same question but just in different ways, right? To store our shared code base for the application or of the application we have built. Okay, so I feel like we're doing good so far, guys. Now let's go ahead and continue. So at this point, looks like we're going to create a new repository. So let's see what they tell us about a repository. To start your code using Git, you create repositories, also known as repos, which are folders that contain all your project files and their entire version history. Hosting a repo in the cloud like on GitHub means that you can also collaborate with other engineers and access your work from anywhere. After signing into GitHub, okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So now that we are here, I'll go to my main page. We are going to create a new repository. Okay, so we'll go here to repositories and we'll hit new. Okay, what are we gonna call it? I'm just gonna call it DevOps project. Okay, because I already have the one from before, and then we're gonna do this for the description. We'll make it public, and then we'll add a readme file. If you guys are looking to build your presence online and you want to showcase your projects, it is recommended to add a readme file, and it is on this readme file that you can explain everything that you've done in the project. That way, whenever someone new is accessing your profile, they can actually not only see the source code, but they can also see exactly what is that you built on, and how exactly is that you need to access certain resources, right, for it to work, or for them to clone even the repository. Okay, so make sure that you add a readme file. Now it's gonna take you a little bit of extra time, building that or explaining everything that you've done and that you're doing, but it's just so that it looks more professional. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click that, and we'll make it public, of course, so that everyone has access to it. Now let's see here what they're talking about. This is a piece of text that introduces and explains your project, like what the project does, how to set it up, and how to use it. Having a readme is super common practice in software development, not just in GitHub, and it helps anyone to get up to speed on your project's purpose and function quickly. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hit create repo. Okay, and let's see here. So create repo, it'll show us that, and they'll want us to take a screenshot of that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a screenshot of these guys. We've successfully created the repository. So our repos, and let's go back here, do your thing, and a Git repository is a folder that's created on the cloud, which will store all the app resources necessary for others to access and build on it. Okay, so now let's go to step number 5, and here is that we're going to go ahead and commit and push our first changes in our code to GitHub. All right, that's exciting. So now that we have a place in the cloud where we'll store our code and track the changes we make, but this storage folder still doesn't know where your web apps files are, right? So now let's connect our GitHub repo to our web app project to store in your EC2 instance. Okay, we're gonna make that connection. So we're going to set up a local Git repo in your web app folder, and then we'll go ahead and connect it to. Okay. So we are going to set up a local Git repo in the web apps folder, and we will also connect it to our newly created GitHub repo. Okay. So how are we going to do this? First, we need to make sure that we are on the correct path, right? So if we run pwd, we can see that we are connected on the right path folder. All right, so pwd, it stands for print working directory. This command asks your server, where am I at right now? And it will show you exactly where we are. Okay, so now that we are on the correct directory, we'll go ahead and create or initialize our Git. So we'll do a Git init, and it's not doing anything. Let's see what it says here. Using master as the same for the initial branch, this default branch name is subject to change. To configure the initial branch name to use in all of your new repositories, we'll suppress this warning call. Okay, so it looks like it looks like it already created it, so I think we're good. This is not necessarily an error that we're encountering, it's just a message. So we'll leave it as is for now. So what does Git init do? To start using Git for your project, you need to create a local repository on your computer. Okay. When you run Git init inside a directory, example in this case, right? Next web project, it sets up a directory as your local Git repository, which means changes are now tracked for version control. What's a local repository? The local repository is where you use Git directly on your own EC2 instance. The edits that you make in your local repo is only visible to you, and it isn't shared with anyone else. Okay, so kind of like I was saying, I wasn't really completely wrong at the beginning when I was explaining the difference between Git and GitHub. In this case, right, we first need to create our Git local repository on our EC2 instance, and it is from here that we'll be able to save all the changes that we're making, and also as well as keeping track of the changes that we're making. And then we're going to push those changes from your local repository, which again is installed on your EC2 instance, to the cloud. All right, and we'll see how that happens in a little bit. All right, so the edits that you make in your local repo is only visible to you, and it isn't shared with anyone else yet. Okay, this is the difference. This is different to the GitHub repository, which is remote cloud version of your repo that others can't see. That makes complete sense. So it says here, oh, we got a bunch of code or yellow text. This yellow text is just Git giving you a heads up about naming your main branch master and suggesting that you can choose a different name like main or development if you want. So if you want to study a little bit of GitHub or Git, right, you have these two, you could call it like a root users, right, where like you can upload your code to to like the main branch, or you can have like a master branch. These are just two different names for like the user, so to speak. I hope that makes sense. All right, so but it'll tell us here. So what is the main branch? You can think of Git branches as parallel versions or alternate universes of the same project. For example, if you wanted to test a change to your code, you can set up a new branch that lets you diverge from the original main version of your code, called master, so you can experiment with new features or test bugs safely. We won't create new branches in this project, and we'll save all the new changes directly to the master, but it's best practice to make all changes in a separate branch and then merge them into a master when they're ready. Pretty self-explanatory, right? So if you want to test things, what you do is you'll create a new branch. And then there you'll test all the changes that you're making, and if it makes sense, if it looks good, it works as expected, you'll go ahead and merge that branch to the main one, and it's that main branch that's eventually going to go into production, right? On an ideal world. All right, so let's go ahead and take a screenshot here of what it is that we saw. And we'll do it. And let's go back here. Git init is a command that will create a local repository on our instance. I run git init. I run git init. I run git init in our local in the EC2 instance terminal. Okay, after running git init, the response from the terminal was that we may create a new branch or rename it as we wish. A branch in Git is a completely different environment where we can test things as we are. The main branch. Okay, think that makes sense. So let's go ahead and continue here. So we'll go head back to our GitHub repository page. In the blue section of the page, title quick setup. If you've done this thing before, copy the HTTPS URL to your repository page. Okay, so basically they want us to grab this and now we are going to run this command, git remote at origin. So we'll do git remote at origin and we'll hit enter. So at this point we are connecting the two, right? We're connecting our remote repository and adding it to the our cloud repository. Okay, so it'll probably going to explain us here. It says your local and GitHub repositories aren't automatically linked, so you will need to connect the two so the updates made in your local repo also can reflect in your GitHub repo. When you set remote at origin, you're telling Git where your GitHub repository is located. Think of origin as a bookmark for your GitHub project's URL, so you don't have to type it out every time you want to send your changes there. Okay, so now we'll run one last command, I think, which will be git add, and this will go ahead and push, or actually with git add, you are going to stage whatever changes that you made before you push it to the cloud, and it will explain it here. So git add stages all files in the network web project to be saved in the next version of your project. What does staging mean? When you stage changes, you're telling Git to put together all of your modified files for a final review before you commit them. This is incredibly handy because you get to see all the edits in one spot, which means it's much easier to check if there are any mistakes or unwanted changes before you commit. Now, in our particular case, it's not showing us any changes that we made to the code because we haven't really made any. Now, if I, for example, go here and do Bruno Soria, we'll do just hello Bruno Soria, right? And we do this. Now if we do a git add, it's still not going to show us. Okay, so, and that's because that might be because we're missing a command, but we'll see here. So we're just going to go ahead and commit. We'll go ahead and commit it, and okay. So your name and email address were configured automatically based on your username and host name. Okay, this is something that we might need to change here. Okay. But let's see what it's telling us here. So we just run that, and now if we push those changes, let me grab this copied, and we'll go ahead and push. Okay, so here we're going to enter our username and password for our GitHub account. Okay, so for mine is going to be soriabruno@95hotmail.com, and the password, I don't know the password, or maybe I do. let's follow here the steps, guys. Okay, before we continue, let's see what this command did. Okay, git push -u origin master uploads or pushes your committed changes to origin, which you've marked as your GitHub repo. Master tells Git that these updates should be pushed to the master branch of your GitHub repo. By using -u, you're also setting an upstream for your local branch, which means you're telling Git to remember to push to master by default. Okay. Next time you can simply run git push without needing to define origin and master. Okay. Okay, so what was the first command and what does it mean? Is that the first command I run was so the first command was so which command? So it's this one, right, guys? A staging area is where we will be able to see what changes have been made before pushing it to the GitHub repo. What was the second command? The second command was this. The second command I run was using and means. Okay, so what this command does, right, with commit, it's going to commit the code, and the -m stands for message, right? So means that we can add a little message to what changes have been made for reference. So every time you commit, your changes, it's advisable and it's recommended that we add a little note of what is that we changed, right? That way, if your coworkers are looking at the commits that you've done, they'll be able to tell what are some things that you've changed. Okay, hope that makes sense. And last, the third command I run was this. Master using you means that we are upstream. It means that we're setting up upstreaming to our main branch by default. Okay. Alright, guys, before I continue, I'm going to stop right here. It's been about 40 minutes, so I'm going to take a little break, but we'll get right back into it. Alright, see you guys in a little bit.